Hey everyone, I'm Rather Incoherent, and I want to talk about Finn. Finn is a rogue that I've always known was good. You look at him, he's got 4 foot, 3 evades, 4 book, access to a bit of Seeker Survivor. Like, there's no way you can't make a good functional investigator out of him. In addition, his star does tend to just say get an extra clue at your location, which is very good, especially for someone whose ability is making them take extra tests, and a class with access to things like Haste and Leo DeLuca to take even more tests. So everything about the Finn card is good, and then you go read the back of it and you get told that you don't actually get all the rogue cards, you just get most of them, you get 0 to 3, and then the illicit cards. The only illicit card not in Rogue is the 18 Derringer in Survivor, by the way. It's just a restriction, it was designed that way, it's intended that way, it just sucks. And 5 splash cards between Seeker and Survivor is just not that good. This is objectively worse deck building than everyone in Dunwich, it's really unpleasant. Other people have the similar things, like Marie has the same deck building rules. But unlike Finn, most rogues aren't playing rogue for the big guns, which is what Finn is getting. Whereas Marie is getting the big spells, that is what Mystics want. In addition, there are a lot more spells outside of Mystic than there are illicit cards outside of Rogue, so the deck building for Finn really does suck. In addition, his deck building gives you Smuggled Goods and Trusty 38 and Caught Red-Handed. And it's one of the most unpleasant set of cards any character gets for their signatures. Finn's Trusty 38 is a gun that doesn't have that many bullets. So you can't really fight just using this, you need a collection of weapons, and with 3 Fist, the most reliable and best way to fight is going to be by just using Underworld Market to guarantee you find a Knuckle Duster. Because they don't have Retaliate if you already tripped them, which Finn is doing as a free action, and Dirty Fighting is encouraging, so even if you want to fight, the Trusty 38 has no home in the deck. In addition, you get to run Smuggled Goods, which allows you to search your deck or discard pile for an illicit card and draw it. There aren't that many illicit cards you actually want to run. I guess you could use this to look for a pickpocketing level 2, that's about it. These 2 signatures are basically dead draws, and the best part about Underworld Market and Finn is that you never have to draw them. You just put them in the Underworld Market and you ignore them, you pretend they aren't there. And then you get Caught Red-Handed, which is a weakness that, honestly just needs to be errata in my opinion. It readies every enemy at your location or a connecting location, and then each hunter enemy at a connecting location moves once towards you. If no enemies move as a result of the effect, shuffle it back in. So almost every time you draw this, it's not gonna do anything, it's gonna shuffle back in. What's really frustrating though, is that you end up playing in ways where you start intentionally trying to have hunters at adjacent locations. More than once, I used my lucky cigarette case intentionally to pull Caught Red-Handed out and move a hunter back to my location so that I could get rid of this card. Because it's not just shuffling back in and wasting a lot of draws, it absolutely is doing that, but you'll find very frequently that you pick someone's pocket and they catch you red-handed. And that's really thematically appropriate, except for the part where readying them doesn't get rid of the card, only moving them gets rid of the card. If they ready and re-engage, they haven't moved, so you still shuffle it back in the deck. And that's so unpleasant. If this checked to see if no enemies moved or were readied as a result of this effect, then shuffle it back in, it would be perfectly fine. And I don't know why it doesn't say that, so instead it's one of the most frustrating weaknesses in the game. It's never really ruined Finn. It's not the most brutal weakness in the game, but it is one of the worst weaknesses in the game, and while it's not the worst, it is probably one of the most frustrating. It's up there with Tommy Muldoon's weakness, completely warping the way you build his deck and stopping him from doing the one thing that he really wanted to do. It's just a deeply frustrating card, as you can tell by how long I've been talking about it. I think getting cards like Your Worst Nightmare and Finn make his deck way more interesting to pilot. Having to choose when you're drawing off pickpocketing based on if you can evade the enemy that you would pull that would hit you for huge amounts of horror. Alright, so I'm gonna be honest with you here. We're gonna have to pretend this was a different weakness when we air this stuff on the channel, because Your Worst Nightmare might sort of have text that I just forgot forever. Yeah, Finn can't kill it. Most of the time, Finn wasn't killing it, he was just evading it and walking away from it, and sometimes Luke was the one killing it, and sometimes a rampaging Shoggoth was the one killing it. But I think a lot of the time, Finn just punched this to death, which was not allowed. Just forgot it had that text. I was like, oh yeah, the thing this one does is it slaps you for 2 horror. Holy shit, is that a big amount for an enemy? But that is actually not the thing about Your Worst Nightmare that makes it special. I thought having 3 health and 2 horror was the whole thing, I just forgot it had additional text. But what I was saying still does stand. having an enemy in your deck as one of your weaknesses is really interesting because it changes how you play around pickpocketing, and I really like that. Now, let's actually talk about the deck. I know Finn's good. How good is he? Finn did wonderfully, but I need to address something weird that happened in scenarios 6 and 7 when I got the Black Fan. Finn was good in scenarios 1 and 2 early on as he was building up that initial experience. In scenario 3, it was just a fight scenario and he crushed it. In scenario 4, he switched back to a more balanced deck, absolutely carried us. Scenario 5, we 100%ed City of the Elder Things, he was great. Scenario 8, absolutely incredible. Ended the scenario with 50 resources, had everything set up, had too many assets to fit on his board. He did wonderfully, did everything I asked him to do, most of which was just killing guys and evading guys, but hey, that's still valuable. Even though I'm not using lockpicks to get clues as much as I would like to be doing on a flex character, he was really, really good for almost all of the campaign. But in scenarios 6 and 7, when I had gotten the Black Fan, he just sort of sucked. In scenario 6, I can sort of get why. There's not enemies to fight traditionally, and punching like 4 times with a Knuckle Duster is way better than investigating with lockpicks and then investigating at 6 a couple of times. So Finn is better as a flex character when he's fighting than when he is getting clues. He does carry his weight on the clue front, but he's better as a fighter. Scenario 6 didn't have anything to fight. Scenario 7 had lots to fight, and he still underperformed. And what I think happened is when you get the Black Fan, you start needing to hoard your money. And Embezzled Treasure is still costing you resources at the end of the scenario, even though it's giving them to you at the start as well. And I found that I just didn't have enough money. I wasn't getting Black Fan online, I wasn't setting up fast enough, and in both of those scenarios, I just sort of set up all scenario, and maybe carried my weight, but barely. And I think what I needed to do was buy Black Fan later, and in my last upgrade, you can see I got Leo DeLuca, Charisma, and Haste, and I think I needed those cards earlier. Consistently in this deck, I found that I actually never played this Milan. That sounds crazy, Milan's such a good card, and I'm a big money deck. And if I had drawn him earlier, maybe I would have. But every time I drew him late, and I'm only investigating a little bit, and at the point where it's like if I play Milan, it's turning off the Black Fan for a turn or two, I don't want to play Milan anymore. So I think what I should have done is not even included Milan. As a flex character, relied entirely on lockpicks to get my clues carried, to do my part there. And this frees up 3 experience from the Charisma, lets you get a Leo much, much sooner in the campaign. I still think I would run Milan earlier in the campaign, but I would switch out of him. I've got double adaptable, I did a lot of switching in this. There's definitely 2 cards that should be splashed in. I couldn't find a 4th card that I wanted, it was like a shortcut. And now with Milan out, there's definitely a 2 of somewhere that should be coming in, I just don't know what it is. Now, beyond that, beyond addressing that I think I needed more actions, I also think I just got really unlucky in scenario 6 and 7, drew my economy very jankily, didn't draw anything that gave me more actions early. I think Finn just underperformed there. I think Dirty Money Finn, which is the way that I'm going to be referring to almost all rogues going forward, because of the combination of Underworld Market, Dirty Fighting, and Big Money cards that I think fit into almost every rogue very easily. I think Dirty Money Finn is an incredible character. I'm not quite sure if he's like in my A+ tier, if he's that high up on the tier list, but he is very clearly towards the top of the pack of characters. As a flex character, he carries his weight with lockpicks. The Lucky Cigarette cases let him draw through his deck very quickly, same with the pickpocketings. His stat line gets very high with Gios and a Black Fan. Savant keeps him safe from the Mythos deck for most of the run, until the very finale. In fact, I had you handle this one as well as Savant, allowing me to be very safe to the Mythos deck. Well Connected lets him brute force through pretty much any scenario test that is thrown his way. Trenchcoat and Lonnie make him invincible to damage. I want to briefly gush about just how good at Dirty Fighting Finn is. All of the rogues that aren't Tony Morgan got a huge buff to their ability to fight in the form of Dirty Fighting. And in Finn, it's at its absolute best. Finn has a free action to evade at 4, he has 3 base fist, so he free action evades them, then he free action Dirty Fights them. And now, essentially, whenever Finn's fighting people, he's already tripped them and punched them, and he's getting +2 to all of his fight attempts before he has spent any of his actions. It's not even close, he's the second best rogue fighter now. Tony is still better. Like, you're just not gonna compete with Tony, I'm sorry, that's how it is. But Skid's never stood a chance, Winnie's not as good, having this extra action is so valuable. Finn is a fantastic flex fighter. I think he's one of the best flex fighters in the game, in fact. When I say flex fighter, I mean a true flex character. They are contributing consistently on clues. but they are leaned very clearly towards fighting. I'm going to go back to some earlier versions of Fenn. This is the 15 experience deck I was using in a strictly fighting scenario for the third scenario of the campaign. There were literally no clues to get, so this Milan is only in the deck because I'd already used my full adaptable swaps with double adaptable. And this deck absolutely crushed the fight game. If you go watch the third scenario of Edge of the Earth, you'll see Fenn doing absolutely incredibly. This deck is so strong at fighting so quickly. And then in the next upgrade, you'll see that I immediately use adaptables and swap back, and I only lose minimal ability to fight. I cut some skills, I cut intel reports, I get more economy, more charisma, deep knowledge, and hornet's nest. Like, I don't actually lose any ability to fight when I swap back over. I'm just getting a charisma, so now I can play Milan as well. Getting more economy to make sure all my stuff is online. I can embezzle treasure more consistently, setting up to start playing a big money deck. But this deck now just like does its job completely consistently. And the previous version, even though I said it's only fighting, it did still have 2 copies of lockpicks inside of this Underworld Market. The only way that this is really not fighting very much is I've cut magnifying glasses, or sorry, not clue finding very much, is that I've cut magnifying glasses, and while I have no charisma, I'm fully intending not to play Milan, it's just here for Lonnie. Like, this deck is just incredible at fighting, even though it's just using a Knuckle Duster and Dirty Fighting. Like, that's it, it's just got a Lonnie for +1 fist beyond that, it's got a haste. It's not doing that much in terms of its fight assets. It does so much work. The core fight set of assets is so strong. And then coming down to our Scenario 1 deck, back when our deck list was much smaller, there weren't a ton of one-of assets, there wasn't 10 more cards because of our Underworld Market. You can see I started with Karen's Obel and Easy Mark. If you have a full collection and you aren't starting your rogues this way, I understand why. But like, boy howdy, if you are not afraid of Karen's Obel, it's just very obviously the best thing you can do within the thick of it. Every rogue basically is either even split or weak to horror. So on every rogue, you can either take 1/1 or take 2 meat. Karen's Obel is giving you an extra 2 experience over the course of the campaign compared to buying it after Scenario 1, and an extra 14 experience compared to not buying it at all. Easy marks are just insane. This is basically emergency cash level 2, except you get 3 of them for 1 experience. Like, losing out on the 1 resource is not a big deal when you compare it to that. You don't need to play the second Easy Mark, you obviously want to. You try to play around it a little bit. But until you get Lucky Cigarette Case level 3 and you can start searching out the extra copies, you basically just throw these out when you have them, unless you have like very directly comparable plays. And as you can see, because it's a big money deck, I have a bunch of money stuff, but since I have no hoarding benefits, I'm running Intel Report in small favor. You can't very well fight at level 0 in Fenn. You've got like your trusty 38 and that's it, and if you commit more to it, if you get cards for it, it's at the cost of stuff like magnifying glasses and Milans, and you don't want to be doing that. So small favor to help fight seemed like a good way to go. Intel Report to turn this money into power seemed like a good way to go. Basically, you're just trying to get your book up to 6 with Milan and magnifying glass, and then move around, dodge people, investigate. You're not really a fighter, you're just flexing by dodging enemies and investigating. You've got very little ways to offer fighting help. You could run backstab, but like, look at the deck. We have 1 track shoes, manual decks, that's it. Our backstab is not accurate enough, it just isn't. You could run sneak buys with the intent of committing them to backstabs, but once you're planning on backstabbing after playing track shoes with manual decks and sneak buy committed, like, you're asking for too much. You just can't really fight very much as Fenn at level 0. But as a flex character, when you're still very consistently evading the enemies, I think that's acceptable. And coming back to the final Dirty Money deck, I'm thrilled with the Scarlet Keys cards. They did a wonderful job at like reinvigorating all of the old rogues without really directly buffing Tony or Trish that much. Tony and Trish are like obviously the 2 best rogues, no one's coming close to competing with them. And the Dirty Fighting archetype is really good for characters like Finn and Winnie and Skids, where their janky suboptimal stat lines directly synergize with flexing by using Dirty Fighting and lockpicks and knuckle dusters. Like, they all just fit together in this neat little package that all of those characters can use very well. Like, there's not a stat line in the game where you can't use Dirty Fighting to fight. You can go play Wendy Adams with Dirty Fighting and a baseball bat and start swinging at 5 at people. You shouldn't, but you can. And I think Fenn is where this generally very good package of cards is at its absolute best. Getting the free action to evade is so helpful for the archetype. And then he just has the stats to make use of everything else. 1 head makes Savant perfect for negating the Mythos deck because he has a 3 in his second lowest stat. 3 fist is great for Dirty Fighting. 4 foot with a free evade is great for Dirty Fighting. 4 book becomes a very usable number with Milans and Black Fans and Giases. and then lockpicks to dig through your deck at base 8, which fully set up goes to base 13, 14, because of Milan, Track Shoes, 2 from Gias, and 2 to Black Fan. So you're investigating between 8 and 14 with these lockpicks. With 2 copies of Lucky Cigarette Case 3 and a Relic Hunter, you get to search through your deck so fast. Just everything about the deck is incredible, and 53 experience in a green deck is not even that high. Like, Edge of the Earth has a lot of experience, but we only got 3 experience from Fatal Mirage. We only got 3 experience from the second part or the first part of the finale. The deck could have gotten way more experience from this from an Edge of the Earth campaign. 17 of this 53 experience is just from In the Thick of It and Karen's Oval, meaning that this is actually a 36 experience deck if I were in any other color. It's just crazy how much free experience green gets. They're up there with Mystics now. Yeah, I'm just really, really happy all around with Fen. This one head is a weakness the card pool has overcome. He makes valuable use of every other stat. He has greatly distributed soak, a great ability with where the card pool's at. For the longest time, I just didn't care that Fen had 4 foot and could evade. It just wasn't something that was very good. But now that Dirty Fighting is in the game, it goes from, oh, that's nice, I get to use my foot a little bit more efficiently now. It's just like a core part of his gameplay loop that is incredibly useful. Scarlet Keys was a huge buff to Fen. I'm very happy with where the character's at. He's great. Definitely one of the better characters in the game, though I'm not quite sure where I rank him in my tier list just yet. Anyways, that's it for now. I've been rather coherent. I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about Fen and the Dirty Money archetype, and I'll see you in the next one. If you liked the video, like, comment, and subscribe. All that stuff really does help the channel grow, and I do greatly appreciate it.